Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1500 to 2000 elo in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment. Today we have a Vienna game with e45 knight to c3. My opponent plays the Max Lang defense with knight to c6. If you want to see the kind of things that you do after knight f6, leading into the Vienna Gambit, I've got loads of Vienna games on my channel and also a full opening guide to the Vienna. And against knight to c6, this is one of the more testing lines in the Vienna for a lot of people. You just go bishop to c4. And one of the big ideas of this opening is that you're delaying the move knight to f3 because you want to play f4 first and then go knight to f3, ideally, right? Because then you can exert far more pressure on the e5 square than if you just go knight to f3, because black can just play a move like d6, and then you're never getting to e5. Whereas if you go f4, then knight f3, well, then you have pressure with a pawn and a knight. Maybe you can make something happen. Also, the bishop, of course, just targets the f7 square, which is very useful. And one of the other benefits of not putting the knight on f3 yet is that we don't block our queen off. So, for example, the very natural bishop c5 in this position, I think we had in a video a few days ago, we have the option of queen g4. And because our knight isn't yet committed to f3, we have the ability to go after the newly created weakness on g7, which leads to some insanely complicated positions which are better for white. But knight f6 is probably the most principled approach. We will play pawn to d3, and the idea is that we want to prepare f4. Yeah, h6 isn't the best move. It is a move. Now, it's interesting because people get concerned about the move bishop to g5, but in the Vienna, that's basically never a move that we're really trying to play. We're not playing a normal Italian game, right? If we were to play knight to f3 in this position, then it would just be like a normal Italian game. And I'm sorry to all you Italian players, but I don't like that. I find that incredibly boring and very repetitive. One of the better moves for black in this position is knight to a5, going after our bishop immediately, and there is no way for us to save the bishop. And there I recommend the move bishop to b3. The computer likes moves like knight f3, knight to e2, I think even queen f3 it likes. I don't like those moves personally. The idea being to have this kind of Maroczy bind structure on the d5 square, but h6, now that we have gotten bishop c4 and d3 in, our bishop is now supporting the f4 pawn. Now we can play f4, exert pressure on e5, and then we'll follow up with knight to f3 at an opportune moment. We're also not really concerned about this bishop coming to g4. There's often tactics where you can deflect the king to f7 and play knight to e5 check and pick up the bishop. Typically, that does involve this knight coming to d4 to put more pressure on our knight and take its eyes off of e5. And we may well get that in this game. That's a very common line. Bishop c5. Black stops us from castling, but it's really not a big deal. We'll continue with knight to f3. And now black needs to do something about his e5 pawn, because we're just threatening to win the pawn now. Because he's played the move h6 as well, if this move hadn't been played, he would have the option of bishop g4 in this position, which is a slightly better line. But by going into this, I believe because we have the extra tempo, we can play the move f5. And this is a really powerful idea in the Vienna, where obviously you can see we win connect 4, which is the most important part, of course. But more importantly, we dominate the light squares with our pawn chain. And this pawn chain can only really be broken if black can execute d5 to try and apply pressure to e4. And let's say we take, well, then f5 will fall, right? But you can't really do that because the positioning of our pieces is designed to stop the move d5. That's one of the big ideas of the Vienna. It's also incredibly difficult for him to force the move through because he doesn't have bishop to e6 because we control that square. And this bishop now can't come to g4 either, which is kind of where it wants to go. So my opponent goes a6, which is a good move because we can't castle, remember. We would like to castle, we can't. And normally we play a move like knight to a4, And maybe knight a4 is the best move in this position, I don't know. But to me, it seemed like a good idea to play f5 before black had a chance to develop the bishop. In the lines where this h6 move hasn't been played, and black goes bishop g4, like on it in this move, right, on move 6, then knight to a4 is the only move that is good for white. Everything else is bad, because we need to get rid of this bishop and get castled ASAP. Here, though, I felt like blocking this bishop off was the better option. So a6 is a good move, because now if knight to a4, he has the a7 square, and then, I mean, we're just going to get hit with b5, so we're going to have to retreat and waste a bunch of time. So I'm also aware my opponent wants to play knight to a5 himself, going after my bishop. So I'm inclined to play the move a4, stopping b5 forever, and giving my bishop a hidey hole on the a2 square. So if knight to a5, we just go bishop to a2, and then wires the knight on the a5 square. Maybe you can justify it with c6 and d5, but I doubt it. We also now need to figure out how we're going to get castled, and if we're going to get castled, because as I previously explained, we can't get rid of this bishop because it has the a7 square. One of the downsides of pushing our f-pawn is we don't have bishop to e3 supported by the f-pawn, because of course our f-pawn is no longer on f2. So the question is, do we continue our position by playing something like queen e2, bishop e3 to try and trade off this bishop and then get castled? That's definitely a strategy. But then the other question is, well, do we actually want to trade this bishop off? Because there could be some very nice sacrifices on h6 in the future. Do we want to castle queenside? I don't think so. That seems incredibly risky, especially since b5 is a ready-made attacking option for black. And typically in the Vienna, you do just castle kingside anyway. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hopefully you're learning lots about this opening and just chess strategy in general. This kind of positionally aggressive style of play that I enjoy so much. It's like very much a constrictive sort of opening, at least played in this manner, and I really enjoy that type of chess. So effectively, we're just dominating the light squares. That's kind of the point. And because we have all these pawns on light squares, it's crucial that our bishop is outside of this pawn chain. Very much like if you play the Caro Khan, which I play, and I know a lot of my subscribers play. It's vital to get your light squared bishop in that case outside the pawn chain before locking it shut with e6. Because if my bishop was back on e2, it wouldn't be contributing a whole lot, right? And now we, of course, toss the ball back into my opponent's court, and he has to figure out how he's going to continue. Is he going to castle kingside and walk into potential attacking ideas? That does look quite risky. I mean, maybe we can even go h3, g4, g5. That looks pretty reasonable. And we could basically just say, you know what? We're not going to castle. You have no way to attack my king. As long as you can't open the center with the move d5, which currently he can't, and I don't see how he's going to, unless he tries knight a5 and c6. But then, you know, d5 can always be met with taking the e-pawn, which is fine by me. So yeah, if black castles kingside, as long as he can't break in the center, that seems really, really scary for black to try and hold on like in that position. So I'm very, very happy with how the game is going so far. This is... Ooh, okay. Very interesting. And my opponent goes knight to g4. Alright, trying to do this. Well, I suppose rook f1 should probably be the move. Although I know that are lines when you invite the knight in and then go rook f1, because you basically say the knight has nowhere to go. If h3, knight to e3, though? Maybe that's annoying. Hitting quite a lot of things in my position. And the question is, do I really want to trade off my bishop for the knight? My bishop is an incredibly good piece. So I'm leaning more towards the move queen e2. Basically saying, okay, no knight to e3 for you. You can give me a check if you really want, but I'm just going to go to d1 and be happy, because that's also a common idea in the Vienna, to play king d1 when you are checked. We're stopping this queen from ever invading the position, which is very useful. So, okay. Very interesting. Also, knight to d5 can be considered. That's also a cool move. Controlling e3 with the knight instead, which also means that you can't play knight d4 with tempo on my queen. If knight d5... oh, then there's knight f2, though. Then there's knight f2. We don't have a good response. It might be okay to give up the rook, but I don't really want to find out. So if queen e2, knight f2, then we have rook to f1, and the knight just gets booted. Interesting. Again, rook f1 immediately, knight e3, bishop e3, bishop e3, queen e2, let's say bishop back to c5. Do we have anything? I don't think so. I'm not thrilled. I don't want to trade off this bishop. It's a good attacking piece. So, knight g4 is an interesting move. Definitely interesting, but I think queen e2 is probably the way to go. And if knight to d4, take. Queen h4 doesn't work because of g3 every time. And if you give this check, I don't really care. I'm just going to go king d1. And, I mean, black can't use this diagonal because, of course, his bishop is blocked off, which makes my position even safer. Okay, takes the bishop all the way back. We could play h3, although that weakens... Well, this diagonal isn't a check anymore, though, so I suppose it's not a big deal. We could go h3 anyway. Oh, no, sorry, there's knight to f2 there, so I do have to be careful, so probably rook f1 is the move. Yeah, to stop this. Because that would come with check and pick up my rook. And this does look a little bit suspect for white, I'm well aware. Like, we can't castle. Our king is kind of weak. I mean, the dark squares in my position are definitely vulnerable, but yeah, the black knight just retreats because there's nothing left to do. We've defended everything adequately. So off goes the black knight, and then we could offer a bishop trade and try and get rid of black's best piece. If bishop e3, knight d4, of course we can't take with a knight because pawn takes would fork our pieces. So maybe not? Because I don't really know if I want to do that. Although, no, maybe that's fine, actually. Yeah, I'm just thinking that if I can make... Even if I have to give up my dark squared bishop, if black has to take with the pawn, and then I get knight to d5 in, then this bishop, although there are lots of dark squared holes in my position, can't actually utilize them because there will be a pawn on d4 blocking its scope. And then this bishop isn't actually that good. So he just voluntarily trades, which is great because that was his best piece. We now also control d4 very nicely, so no knight d4 for you. We have great control over d5 still. Our queen takes up the mantle of controlling the dark squares now that the dark square bishops have come off. And okay, bishop to d7. Cool. How are we going to continue? I quite like the idea of just h3, g4, taking some space. We could tuck our king on c1. We could do a rook lift, but knight a5 is kind of annoying. We could go knight to 2d5, but I'm not really sure what we accomplish by playing that. d4 is the obvious pawn break, but I'm not sure I want to execute a pawn break with my king in the center like this, so h3, g4 seems like an easy plan just to grab a bit of space. Or even rook g1, g4, h4 to go g5 and take with the pawn. Maybe? Is my rook better on the f file or the g file? I'm going to go h3, because I also want to take away the g4 square from the black knight. I don't think, even if I do execute g5 and my opponent takes, I don't think I want to take with the pawn. I think I want to open the g-file. Okay, my opponent clearly wants to castle queenside. The question is, can I go b4, b5? And I don't really see a reason why not. So let's go rook b1, supporting b4, b5. Castling looks incredibly dangerous, considering I have many pieces pointed at your king. And I'm basically just trying to lock this bishop out of the game, stop d5 at all costs, because if d5 happens, my king gets exposed. And my king seems relatively safe in the center of the board because the center isn't opening up. The only way, to me, there seems to be to open up the center is either g6, trying to get me to take, but g6 I can always meet with g4. That's one of the other benefits of h3. I can just support my f-pawn very nicely. Okay, knight a5. Yeah, so bishop to a2, I suppose. Bishop a2, bishop here, bishop here. Well, then I just have b4. So black accomplishes nothing. You can't play c6 because I'll trap your knight. Or even play queen b6. Although there is queen d8 there. But the knight gets trapped at the end of the line anyway. Knight a5 is a very short-sighted move, I think, because b4 is on the way, and all you're doing is encouraging this with tempo. Sure, you could say I'm destabilizing my knight, but I don't think so. Let's go b4. You're going to have to retreat. And can black really castle queenside now? I don't know. Knight c6. Taking seems wrong. Ooh, knight b7. Really? Really, really? Well, the c-pawn can't move, I don't think, because of queen to b6. Wow. Okay. We could lock the position with a5. c5 seems good there, though. We could bring the bishop to b3 just to defend a4, which looks reasonable. We could take. Pawn takes. Maybe bishop d5 is interesting. Because take forces queen d8. And then we get f6 as well. Ooh, that looks really nice. Maybe knight to d5? If queen d8. Take, bishop to d5, c6, bishop to b3 looks interesting. Oh no, even queen b6 is nice. Yeah. This feels right to me. This feels right. The knight can't be good on this square. It just looks like a liability. And if rook b8, then I just have like queen a7. And if you castle kingside, I mean, you're just walking into more trouble. As I said, as long as I can keep the center closed, my king seems very safe. Of course, you can't take that because I'll take here or I'll take here. I mean, you know, my knight is fantastic. Okay, retreats the queen. And I think I want to take the knight. That was my idea. Now, I could go a5, which is an option. And basically say... Well, no, then c5 is strong. Then c5 is quite strong. Knight b6. Rook b8. Do I want this bishop? I don't think so. I think I want to take the knight. And then if you take with the pawn, you weaken your structure massively. If you take with the queen, then I wanted to go bishop to d5. Bishop d5, c6, bishop b3. If c5, bishop goes back. And the knight is just a liability. If bishop here, c6, bishop b3, take. Well, then we're just getting... No, if c6, we always have queen to b6 anyway. Yeah, that was the whole point. Why have I forgotten that? The whole point was to go queen to b6, but the question is, do I do it immediately? Queen b6 CD5, queen B7. Let's say queen D8. A5? Don't know. I think it's better to retreat the bishop first. Because queen b6 is still on the cards. If you go c5, then I'm just going to bring my bishop back to d5. And you'll have to deal with the knight again. And then my bishop is fantastic. I suppose this knight isn't amazing. But yeah, now we go back. Bishop d5. No, you can't do that. Take, 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 take. We just go up a pawn. e5 is going to fall. The king can't castle. That is completely winning. That is completely winning. This is the kind of positional pressure that I'm talking about. Like, there was no big attack on my opponent's king. If he'd have castled kingside, maybe there would have been. But there doesn't need to be. We have so much... We're up a pawn now. We have so much positional pressure. This connect 4 pawn chain has remained intact the entirety of the game because we dominated the light squares so much that black could never even like attempt to break up the structure. And now black is on the verge of going down 2 pawns. And it's a disaster. It's a disaster for black. His bishop literally can't do anything. I mean, almost all of my pieces are on light squares, bar my queen, which would normally mean that my opponent having a light squared bishop would be good for him. But it kind of isn't, because whilst he can see a lot of my pieces, the pawns are restricting the bishop's movement so well. Now, the game isn't over yet. The game isn't over yet. We still need to convert this position. There's also the question of, do we want a queen trade or not? So, okay, yeah, he goes rook back to b8. Seems like an odd move, but then again, there's not many good moves. Suppose rook c8, maybe? Don't know. The rook is undefended still. The question is, should we take on e5 with the knight or the queen? Or not take with either just yet, because we don't have to. Black still can't castle. He still can't defend the e5 pawns, so we're technically in no rush. We could take on b5, but I'm tempted just to play a5 and really squeeze the position, because now we kind of remove a good portion of black's potential counterplay on the queen side. And yeah, now if he goes rook c8, now I'm happy to force a queen trade, because black runs out of any counterplay whatsoever. The only thing I was slightly concerned about was, well, maybe black can take on a4 and have a couple of passed pawns. I mean, they're double. They're not very impressive, but it's annoying. Okay, bishop c6. We could take the bishop, but I'm kind of liking the move f6. This bishop can't really do much. f6 is a really good move. If you take, then rook takes, and your position is falling apart. So you can't take that pawn. If you play g6, well, this pawn is a massive pain, really. I don't have an immediate way through, but it's very nice. Yeah, he does go g6. I could nab the rook. I don't think I want to. There's no need. Go c4. No, that doesn't do anything useful. Rook b4 is a move I'm liking the look of. Trying to go rook d4. Also, knight to g4 is interesting. So you can't castle, but then h6. Knight e3, castles. d4 is a move I'd love to play, but he'll just take. Yeah, doesn't really do anything useful. I could just take the bishop. Rook takes. Rook b4. Castle. Rook d4. Rook e8. Oh, no, wait. Actually, maybe I'm overcomplicating this. Can I just take and then push? Or maybe I should bring the king and then start pushing. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, castles. Makes sense. I know we're up 2 pawns, but I still want to be as accurate as I can. Let's take the bishop now. I feel like c3, d4, e5 is the way to go. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, to be fair, I did miss that move. I didn't consider that. It's a good move. See, I said we need to try and be accurate, and I'm being a bit inaccurate here. Rook c1 is very passive. Rook c4, c3, rook a4, rook a1, rook back, rook to a3 looks good. Maybe rook c1 is the way to go. Because I want to play c3. Rook c3 looks interesting, but I think rook f3 should solve that problem. I basically want to create the arc squared pawn chain. That's my idea. And then I can bring my king up to d3. I stop b4. And I'm just going to continue pushing when I get the opportunity. But for the moment, my pawns are kind of split up in the center, right? I feel like it's important to hold on to f6, because if f6 falls, this is drawable for black. In rook endgames, being up 1 pawn often isn't enough. I do have a passed d pawn, of course, but, you know, it could fall relatively easily if I don't support it well enough. So I'm being very, very cautious here, very careful for how I'm going to manage this endgame, because this is the kind of position where a lot of people would throw the game away for no real reason. Okay, rook e8. That seems like a very nice move. That seems incredibly nice. I thought a move like rook c4 made more sense, but now I don't see a problem with e5. What's the point? Now I'm just going to get c3, and I'm going to create this pawn chain. I'm going to make sure I support the center of the the base of the pawn chain very well. And then you can't get rid of the pawns. Maybe he's trying to stop d5 by keeping an eye on e5. Yeah, this is too little too late. He should have done this in the first place. This rook e8 move only helps me. Rook a4, rook a1. Because, I mean, a5 is technically weak, but the only way to get to it is from behind, right? We're also stopping b4. I think rook b1, rook b4 is a sequence of moves I would like to play. I don't know what that does. I suppose b4 is maybe the idea. But I'm just going to go king d3, I think. And just get a little bit closer to my pawns. Also, b4 would hang the rook in all of these lines now. Making sure we still support c3. I still want to execute the plan of rook b1, rook b4. To make things very simple. If black goes rook a4, then rook a1, rook c4, probably rook f to b1 to go rook to b4, which will probably boot the rook away. And then once my rook is on b4, then I can bring my other rook to, like, I don't know, the e file, for example, to try and push e6. Maybe I can bring my king up and try and go d5. This is still an endgame that has to be carefully performed. Again, if we lose 1 pawn, this could be a draw. So we're still going to be very accurate if and when we can, because don't throw away all of the I don't want to throw away all of the hard work of doing this, of like playing a good game of chess and just throwing it away in a winning endgame. That is not something that we want to happen. So Yeah, I mean, these rook moves just don't seem very scary or like they do a whole lot. They're kind of just helping my pieces to come into the squares that they want to go to anyway. My king clearly wants to be on d3, right? Supporting the pawns and the squares around the pawns. Not sure what my opponent can do other than just kind of shuffle and try and apply general pressure. But again, not much pressure to be had here. I'm going to pause the video because I don't know why my opponent's taking so long. Okay, he's finally made a move. Rook c5. Very fancy move. I can't take because of the pin, and he wants to take on e5 because of the pin. So, I mean, we could just go rook e1. Just go rook e1, keep things uncomplicated. I'm sure king e4 is also fine, but rook e1 is also fine. We're not threatening to take still because the pin still exists, but he can no longer take on e5. And again, I mean, I'm sure king e4 is playable, but I like the king watching c4, really. Again, I want to bring my rook to b4. Yeah, I think I want to bring the rook to b4. Maybe I can even play c4 myself. Although I have to be careful, because maybe like b4 or even takes and then takes on a5. Seems unnecessary to allow that kind of thing. What's good about this endgame as well is that the black king isn't doing anything, mostly because of how restricted his movement is because of my pawn, which is good, which I'm very happy with. We can expand on the king side if we want. Okay, doubles up. Cool. Do we go e6? E6 looks like the right move. Just shifting the focus. Because, of course, he has to take this. I mean, if we get e7, that looks completely losing. Yeah, because, like, let's say he plays a move like rook f5 going after the f-pawn, then I'll just push, he moves, and I'll defend. So now, I open another avenue. He's focused on my d-pawn, and now I've switched the focus to the 6th rank and my very strong f-pawn. Let's, of course, double up. We do not want to take and play a move like rook f1, which is very passive. We want to be active. Okay, brings the king. Am I just losing the pawn, though? Maybe? Although, having said what I already said, maybe taking and going rook f1 is the easiest, because you can't take it. You can't take, because the rook trade, I get into a winning king and pawn endgame. So I'm actually going to do that. Here, check. I don't accomplish anything. There's nothing there for me. So, as much as I don't want to play this move, it feels like the pragmatic decision. And, I don't know, maybe I can step up with the king if given the opportunity. If rook e6, probably d5, and I'll step up the board with the pawn. I have 2 passed pawns here. I'm still up 2 pawns, and again, you can't really go ahead. Okay, that's not how the sequence would go. Rook takes, king takes. You can't do that. Yeah, no, you can't get away with that. Absolutely not. Because your pawns can't move. My pawns can move. And all I'm going to do is keep pushing you back. And then you're going to give me access to one set of pawns eventually. Probably this side, because it seems a bit closer. And I can easily scoop 2 up and promote. So, yeah, I mean, he can do that, but I will play h4, stop the g-pawn moving. The h-pawn, of course, can't move either. And now the black king has to move. Neither of his pawns can move, either because they're blocked or they'll get taken. So he has to move the king and allow my king to step into the position. Yeah, and he resigns. He has to try and play that rook endgame. Trading the rooks makes it very, very easy for white to win the king and pawn endgame. Hope you guys enjoyed the game. Let's jump into the analysis, see what the computer has to say. Okay, so we played at 89.4% accuracy. My opponent played at 82.1. Let's jump into it. So, like I said, if you want to learn the Vienna for yourself, everything after knight to c3, I have a full video guide on my channel, whether you want to learn it for the first time or refresh some of your lines with like explanations rather than just memorizing the moves, because that's just how I like to play chess and how I like to teach chess. But okay, knight c3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight to f6. After the move d3, the best line for black is probably knight to a5, in which case the computer has a few moves it likes. It likes a4, it likes queen f3, it likes knight g to e2, it likes a3. It also likes bishop b3, which is my move of choice, and I like these positions. You lose your light squared bishop, but you open the a file. You're still going to play f4 most likely. Let's say like bishop c5, f4, d6, knight f3, or even f5. Very similar looking position, right? So my opponent goes h6, which isn't the best. We go f4, bishop c5, knight to f3, d6, and here I had to choose between knight a4 and f5. I chose f5, which is the second best move. Knight to a4 is the better move. And after bishop b6, knight takes, a takes, then apparently the computer wants to take on e5, which normally we don't do. And to be honest, I wouldn't. I would probably say, I don't know, like a move like a3 looks okay. I don't see what's wrong with that, giving the bishop a hidey hole. Yeah, the computer wants this for black, I think, which, gotta be honest, I would take white here any day of the week. I don't see how it's plus 0.8, but okay. I got f5. Kind of the wrong decision. Here, black should definitely play knight to a5, going after my bishop. And after like bishop b3, knight takes, pawn takes, a5, giving his bishop some breathing room. Queen e2, let's say castles, bishop e3? No, g4. Yeah, basically black can't castle because we will just go g4. So, very scary, like I said. But a6 was played. We go h4, which is good. Knight g4 is a mistake. Here, knight g5 is the best move, which I saw opening up this attack. I didn't think this was good, though, because I was like, well, we're just opening up the h file for black. Apparently it's good. Rook h4. Well, no, then we take on g5, so what's wrong with f6? Oh. Oh, yeah, that's actually really strong. If takes, black is losing. Just completely lost. We're just mating him. So what if black doesn't take? Knight d4. And the best move is... The only move is rook h3. Okay, yeah, I'm never playing that in a million years. Queen e2 is probably the better way to go about this position. If knight to f2, we'll just go rook f1, and the knight will have to retreat. And then we can kick the knight out even further if we want. And then we just play the position very happily. So bishop f2, king d1 is the move. Bishop back, rook f1, stopping knight to f2. We take away both these squares, and my opponent just retreats, which is the best move. Here, bishop to e3, trying to trade off the bishops. Take, take. My initial concern was knight to d4, because you can't take with a knight because you get forked, right? But then I realized I can take with the bishop. If bishop takes, then obviously take is very good. Just to demonstrate, something like here, e5 is the best move. But even if I play knight d5, it's still very good. c6 take. Still a nice position, right? We're still dominant in the center. And my other consideration was if here and he takes with the pawn, then just knight d5. And I thought this was a very strong position, like c6, bishop back to b3. You just can't castle, or you just lose on the spot. So let's say queen e7 is the best move. Queen d2, I don't understand that. I'd probably play a move like h4 here, which looks far more natural. Bishop d7, g4, something like that. Say castle queenside. h5. Yeah, the computer just wants to take all the space away from black. Let's say a move like f6. I mean, this bishop just sucks, and we can get into the light squares. But anyway, My opponent trades and goes bishop d7. We go h3, which is the best move. Queen e7. Rook b1 is inaccurate. Knight d5 immediately it likes. No, it doesn't. No, it's changing its mind. It wants g4, and if castle queenside, then it wants knight d5, and e d5. What? Queen a7? Oh, the knight is just lost. You can't go back because you get mated. So the only way to avoid mate is to give the king a way out or sacrifice the bishop. So we would do this, and if this, then this. Yeah, okay, very nice. But I went rook b1 with the idea that on castles I'll go b4. And this is completely winning for white because we're going to go b5, ab5, ab5, knight a5, even rook a1, take. We have a bind on d5. We control the light squares so well, and we're just, well, we actually just have mate here, but you get what I mean. So knight a5 is a mistake from my opponent. We just go bishop a2, and the best move is to retreat. It's not a good move. He goes b5, we go b4, kicking the knight back. And then I go knight d5, slightly inaccurate. Computer prefers a5. I thought c5 was strong, but now it wants knight d5, and after knight takes, bishop takes, rook b8. Wants knight d2. And if this... Okay, well, it's changing its mind, because now it thinks black can hold, so I'm not really sure I trust it. So I go knight d5, which I thought was very good. Queen d8, we take on f6, queen f6, and bishop to d5. And we basically just say, look, the knight is not good. You go c6, I'll come right back. If you take, then I'll take back, and we have very good pressure. Queen b6 on the way. C4 maybe, locking down d5 forever. The best move is to castle, but like even this looks terrifying. I can just switch my focus very, very quickly. And if you play some inaccurate moves like rook f8, h4, rook a to b8, g5, the game's already over. It's really bad. So c5 was played, and I just go straight back to d5. Rook b8, and taking is actually a mistake. Better is ab5, and after bishop b5, c4, okay, I can understand that. Check. King d2, queen d8. Wait, what about queen e7? bc5, dc5, rook b6, castles, rook g6, rook... Oh, okay, what? Yeah, that's just game over. Wow. I took on b7, and there's only... Basically, black can't take back, because then my queen gets him. What he has to do is ignore me entirely, and either go b4 or rook c7. Which is not intuitive at all. So let's say rook c7. ab5, ab5. If I take, apparently black's okay. Because my queen has no point of entry. Even so, I mean, this still looks very good for white. Like, I don't know. Computer wants rook b2. Castles. I still don't see the problem with just attacking. Oh no, then there's queen a3 though. So queen d2? And then if queen a3, queen b4, and if check, king e2, queen a7. No, okay, yeah, whatever. My opponent takes, which is the most natural move. We take back, and we're just completely winning. Rook to b8, taking is the best move. I didn't really want to give my opponent an avenue to escape the position, so I just shut it entirely. Rook c8, force the queen trade, bishop c6. f6 is very good, g6, I mean, you can't take that. Like, taking is horrific. It should be very, very obvious. And you can't let me take either. So, like, let's say castle, take. There's too many open lines against your king. I don't think you can allow that. So, g6, I would say, is the best move. King d2, castles. Taking on c6 is inaccurate, actually. fair, there was rook b3. I thought bishop b7 was a decent move, though. And I thought there was no obvious targets for my knight, and then it would become more of a weakness. Oh, the computer wants to go for an immediate trade. Let's say my opponent declines. Oh, there's knight d7 there. Let's say rook here. King e3. Rook here. Ooh, that's very, very nice. Okay. Anyway, I took on c6. d4, building the pawn chain. Apparently c3. Oh, that's really smart. And then we force the rook, all the rooks off, basically. Well, if take... Yeah, but then this is just all falling. That's very smart, sacking the pawn for exchanges, but this is also fine. I thought my opponent had to go rook c4 or rook c3 here. Computer agrees. This is the only way to try, but still, you're not getting anywhere. Like, there's no way in. And worst case, I can just do something like this. I thought this was a good idea. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm hanging that pawn. Rook at e3. And then, I don't know, I can maybe invade. Computer doesn't actually care. It wants rook a1, rook a c4, e5. It wants to sack the pawn. And again, force the rooks off the board. So something like take, rook here, king d3. This is game over. So, yeah, rook e8 was played, which was very kind, because my move is obvious. Rook c4, my move is again obvious. Rook d8, my move is pretty obvious. Rook c5. Rook fe1 is the best move because e6 is strong. And we execute e6. And we create more weaknesses in the position. Now, admittedly, I missed the fact that king f7 forced me to trade. Now, the computer likes this, although it prefers what I did. It thinks that this we can grind out for a win, but it seems complicated. With two sets of rooks each, black can create like pretty good counterplay against my king. So instead, I figured we should trade and just go rook f1. Computer wants to sack the pawn and go rook b7 to try and play rook to b6, which is very smart because if, let's say this, I mean, maybe this doesn't work here because the king gets close to the pawn. But we have that threat at all times, and we can kind of just slow play the position. Rook d8, well then we just get this, and the game is over. So you can't really remove the rook. So, like, what does black do? Like, king f6, then rook b6. The king can't get close enough, so... Yeah, rook f1 is what I chose, though. And then rook takes just lets me win, really. Black should try and hold the position together, but to be fair, there's very, very little that can be done. Like, maybe you can go after the c-pawn and create some counterplay. In fairness, this would probably be the best way to try and play. But it's still, like, completely lost. You're still completely losing, because I've got two passed pawns. My opponent takes, though. We bring the king. Get this opposition, right? So the king will have to move and let us in at some point. And then after h5, just h4, and my opponent resigns. Because let's say king c7... King e5, king d7, d6, king d8, king e6, king e8, d7, king d8. I could even just stalemate him, basically, and force him to lose a pawn. So if, like, this, I can... The computer wants this, which is mad. It just wants to allow the promotion and mate my opponent, which is really funny. Realistically, I can take... And then after g5, I can take. And then after h4, I can just step aside. And then you either let me in or you give me another pawn and then you let me in. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see my full Vienna Gambit, Vienna Game, Vienna Opening guide, check out the video up here. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.